long has it been since she's been responsive? We don't know. She ran away and they found her in the dirt.
An Arizona dad and the woman his kids called their stepmom are accused of treating their 3 children horrifically in what medical professionals say amounted to torture. When Richard Baptiste and Anicia Woods emerged from their rural campsite with an unresponsive 10-year-old, authorities were immediately suspicious. And now, newly filed court documents are giving us more insight into what may have been happening within this family directly from the couple's other alleged victims. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber.
How long has it been since she's been responsive? We don't know. She ran away and they found her in the dirt. We only know for as long as he got her on the quad and gave her to us.
I'm not getting any signs.
Where were you guys at?
We live
east of Petrified Forest, and we're like 20 minutes in.
So you're in Apache County?
Yeah, I believe so. We just moved here at the start of the month, so I'm still kind of getting
She was involved in an accident?
No, she ran away. She's on medications. And she hasn't been on these medications in about a month because we've been moving.
Okay.
And then she ran.
Hold on a second.
That chilling body cam video has been released as part of an ongoing investigation by Arizona officials into 32-year-old Richard Baptiste and his 29-year-old longtime girlfriend, Anicia Woods. On July 27th, first responders found 10-year-old Rebekah Baptiste unresponsive on the ground on the side of a highway. Her 2 brothers were inside the car, her biological father, stepmother, they were frantic nearby. And according to a police report, Baptiste and Woods claimed that Rebekah had run away, had been found by an unknown neighbor in a ditch. So they rushed her to what they thought was the closest emergency facility, at least 30 minutes from their remote home. But here's the thing. On the way, Woods called 911, kind of seemed hesitant to pull over to meet emergency responders or even to do CPR.
I need you to pull over so that I can page them out to you and we can start CPR.
Would it be easier if is it going to be faster if we just keep going? Because we're almost to Goldberg.
I understand that. I need you to pull over so I can have EMS meet you.
We have been on top of this story for a while now. This is one that we need to keep on talking about. And I just want to take a quick minute to thank our sponsor, Upside, because it's with their support that helps us to keep on doing this. Now, if you don't know what it is, Upside is great. It is a free app that gets you cash back when you buy daily essentials. So I pump my gas, I can use Upside. I go out to lunch, I can use Upside. Maybe I get something at a convenience store, I can use Upside. And why not get cash back when I do all these things, right? This is actual, real cash back. It's money that appears in your Upside app that you transfer right into your bank account. So once you have the free Upside app, you claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. You pay as usual using a debit or credit card. You follow the steps on the app, you get paid. So to find out how much you can earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen. But make sure to use our promo code SIDEBAR because you'll get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. So the family, which also included 2 young boys, ages 6 and 8, had recently moved from Phoenix to Concho, Arizona, and said that they didn't know enough about the area to know where to take Rebekah. Medical personnel, they were shocked at this little girl's condition as they tried to revive her. And they tried to get straight answers out of Baptiste and Woods.
And she's been running away for the last 3 or 4 weeks since we've been here.
Okay.
She ran away this morning. We went out and tried to find her, and our neighbor found her.
What time this morning?
We got up about 9:30, so it would have been close to 10:30.
So you guys saw her the night before?
Yeah.
Okay.
We all sleep in the same building.
Okay. And then, so you said she ran around that morning, and you guys were trying to find her?
This morning. This morning, yeah.
And you guys went out trying to find her, and then your neighbors found her?
Neighbor found her, yeah.
Okay, what were they doing down there? How'd they find her?
They were on quads.
They were on their quads, okay. And then they brought her to you?
Yeah.
At your house?
Yeah, well, technically it was my great uncle's. He died recently, so we moved in there.
Okay.
So that's kind of how people know us up there.
Did she have any signs of life when she got brought to you?
She was almost basically like this. She was slightly responsive. She was still breathing on her own.
What do you explain to me what you mean responsive?
Like she was just breathing on her own.
Breathing on her own?
But that was about it. And then as we were driving this way, started seeing color change in her lips, and we were just fucking hauling it.
Okay, you said she...
Yeah, she got that when she was in Phoenix.
Okay.
She ran away.
Did you guys take her to get treated for it?
Yes, she has a primary care, and then she also did a 7-day stay down in Phoenix.
Okay.
Not for that, but just for a prior incident.
Okay. And explain to me what you're going through. You said she's diagnosed with what? Explain that to me. Okay.
She was on 3 different medications before we left. I can't remember the third one right now, but it's been a little bit since she's been on her medication since we moved up here.
Now, Rebekah was transported from facility to facility as doctors and nurses tried to treat the traumatic wounds to her body, but unfortunately and sadly, she died 3 days later. Baptiste and Woods, they were arrested. They were charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and child abuse. And now, according to newly filed court paperwork, we're learning more details, but prosecutors, they are seeking to join the defendants' murder cases together and prosecute them as part of one trial. So to talk about that, to talk about the legal implications and just the gruesome new details that are revealed in these documents, I want to bring in attorney and legal analyst Safa Robinson-Ferrer. Safa, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sorry this is the case that we are talking about, but it is incredibly important to shed a light on. I first want to talk about the law with you. So if you have prosecutors in Apache County, they're asking a judge to consolidate Baptiste and Woods cases together. It's what we call a joinder. And the document states, the evidence in both cases was developed during a single investigation. The conduct led to the charges are all of a same or similar conduct and are connected together in their commission and are all part of a common scheme or plan. So Safa, what is the benefit of trying them together? Why would prosecutors want this?
There's a significant benefit in trying both of these defendants together. And primarily what it's going to be is once that the trial commences, the prosecution is going to be able to call the same witnesses. They don't have to do 2 separate trials calling all of the same witnesses. The witnesses that will testify to evidence that was obtained throughout the investigation that really applies to both defendants here. As suspects, and they're notably charged with the same crimes, the evidence used against one can be used against the other and both. And it really just streamlines the prosecution and the trial so they don't have to recall witnesses later. And primarily, if at some point they're going to call these 2 young boys to testify, they don't have to continue to re-victimize these young men or these young boys as they testify at a trial. And also, it's really significant to have a juror look at both individuals that are charged or alleged to have committed a crime as opposed to just one. And it really sits heavier with the jury in their minds as they continue to listen to the evidence and deliberate, especially when you have one of those individuals that's a parent to the child that was deceased and their partner.
That all makes sense, particularly having young witnesses having to testify multiple times. Totally get it. Are there challenges, though, if these cases are joined together, either for the prosecution or the defense? I mean, one of the things that I'm thinking about is if you had 2 separate cases, and let's say there was an example where there was a hung jury in the first case, or there was a not guilty verdict in the first case, the prosecution can learn what maybe didn't work the first time around and change it for the second trial. But what are the potential challenges if the cases are joined together for the prosecution or the defense?
So primarily for the defense here, they're not going to want the cases joined together. They're going to want their defendants or their clients charged separately. And they're going to argue against that joinder motion and essentially say that it would be too prejudicial, that one case, may have a different set of facts or circumstances than the other. And also the possibility that these 2 individuals will have to testify against one another. So that's what the defense is going to argue. Of course, they don't want a joinder here. As far as the prosecution goes, with them, essentially, if there was not to be a joinder, then again, there's the implication or the issue of having to recall witnesses. Some witnesses may be available in the first trial, but may not be available for the second trial. Stories may change between the testimony of witnesses. And again, primarily thinking of these young boys, because there's a high likelihood that they will be called to testify, you have to put them on the stand. You have to prepare them as witnesses and get them to tell the same story for the first trial and the second trial. So it just makes it easier for the prosecution to join those cases. And it can be a burden if they are not joined on the prosecution's end.
If one decides to testify against the other, first of all, very awkward, right? I mean, in that courtroom, they're going to be there. But how does that complicate this? That was interesting you mentioned that, because I'm wondering, You know, there are a lot of times when you have separate cases and somebody will testify and the defense will put the blame on someone else who's not in that courtroom, right? Is not being tried at that time. I always wonder what the effect is on the jury. They don't see that person. They don't hear that person. Does it make the defendant currently on trial that they're deciding the fate of more credible versus they're looking at the other person? They're seeing the other person. So you have maybe each blaming each other in one trial. How do you think that would shake up?
That's going to be the complicated thing. It's going to turn to a who's done it. And I expect that if this case goes to trial and they are joined, one of the possible defenses, at least for one of the defendants, will probably be some sort of domestic violence or domestic abuse defense and saying, this person forced me to commit these alleged acts against this child. And so pointing the finger at one another and that whodunit theory, it could really sit with the jury and it can go one of two ways. Either they're going to believe the testimony of one of these defendants that, yes, they were victimized and under the control of the second and acting in that manner at that person's direction, or they're going to believe that they both acted on their own volition and committed these acts towards this trial. And I think particularly with a case of this nature, when you have a child victim and allegations that are as gruesome as this, juries like to find somebody responsible, and they're more likely to hold both individuals responsible, even if they're pointing the finger at one another.
I mentioned before that this filing not only talks about the joinder issue, but it lays out new details. And these new details that were uncovered in forensic interviews with Rebekah's brothers, and I want to talk about this with Safa. But it also, by the way, lays out important biographical information about the family and how long the children have been under Baptiste's care. He's the biological father, again, of 10-year-old Rebekah, as well as an 8-year-old boy, a 6-year-old boy. They're referred to as KB1 and 2 in the court paperwork. And Baptiste and Woods, they had been in this relationship for around 4 years. And Baptiste had regained custody of his kids from the Arizona Department of Child Safety over the last 1 or 2 years. So reading from the joinder request, it says both defendants said RB ran away multiple times. According to defendants, this behavior started in Phoenix, including October 2024, when RB ran to a QT and exclaimed that her stepmother was abusing her, hitting her hands and legs. They said there was another time in the last week of June when RB jumped out of a second-story window at their apartment in Phoenix. According to both defendants, RB chose to run away to get away from them and find another adult or family to take her in. She was running away from us. That's what she said. Baptiste further stated she just said that she was going to run to the well because she would at least be able to get water and maybe find somebody there. Now, Safa, later on in the document, prosecutors note that when medical personnel examined Rebekah, who wasn't wearing any shoes, the soles of her feet were apparently clean. So the argument would be, was she really running out through the wilderness? I mean, does that blow a hole in the defendant's story here?
It does. And I think that some of the injuries that were observed on Rebekah were significant here. Significant to the point where I think there's going to be an argument to be made that she never had the ability to run at all, that her back injuries and things of that nature essentially wouldn't put her in a position to run or to be mobile at any point in time, which again would also be a blow or negate the theory, the defense theory that she ran away. The soles of her feet, the significance of the injuries is not really consistent with someone that would have the ability to run away.
Let's talk about that because it also says, quote, in their statements, both defendants admit to use of exercise as punishment, as well as spanking and hitting the children with a belt on multiple occasions. Baptiste described hitting RB with the belt approximately 10 times with a pain level between 1 to 10 at a 7 and said he used, quote, excessive force. Safa, are you surprised that they're admitting this?
Very surprised that they're admitting this, but what we also know in this case, because generally people will always try to protect themselves, especially in cases like this, they know that they're suspects, they're ultimately charged. They're going to want to protect themselves by saying something that is more beneficial to them. In other words, I never beat my child. I never did this. I never did that. Now, if there are certain injuries that are consistent with abuse, then we might see a situation where somebody will somewhat admit to having disciplinary towards that child, or just pointing the finger towards the other person. So it's a little surprising here, but I think what's also really notable is that the allegations are these children have been abused for a significant period of time. And there have been instances where they've been in school and they've been in other places where they've disclosed this abuse. They have been investigated by the Department of Children and Family Services, and there were no findings against Mr. Baptiste or anybody else, which is pretty significant here. And I think, personally speaking, the ball was dropped with respect to the investigations and things like that. And this ultimately could have been prevented if there were significant eyes on what was going on with this family.
But I also wonder if it complicates it, because we see this a lot in child abuse and torture cases where parents, I don't know if the argument that they try to mount is, oh, we have a right to discipline our children, and there's a line there. How do officials determine whether it's gone too far? In and of itself, right? Spanking, you could potentially arrest somebody and prosecute them for that, but I don't know if you would have that. I don't know if prosecutors would say that we could have a winning case. And that's a scary reality, but I guess, what is that line? Because, how many times have we talked about before where why didn't Department of Child Services get involved sooner rather than later? Well, the law would state that there is a goal for reunification. There's a goal to keep the family together. There's a goal to give parents a right to bring their children up how they want to bring them up. The state is only going to get involved if they absolutely have to. These are complicating factors, and I wonder if that's what you might be seeing here. Yeah, we're going to admit to certain things, but it makes us more credible, right? It shows us, yeah, maybe we took things a little too far, but we're not, killers. I don't know if I'm thinking about this the right way.
No, and you're right, Jesse. And not only that, but, we have situations here where these children ultimately are being parented by these individuals. And there is an aspect of discipline that is necessary as you're bringing up children. And what is the point? What is the fine line? The fine line is you can't break any bones. You can't break any skin. You can't leave any bruising or anything like that. People spank their children, whether it be with a hand or with a belt and things of that nature, but you can't leave any bruising on your children. And that is one of the things that the Department of Children and Family Services and these agencies will look at. And their primary purpose is to protect the children ultimately. Now, one of the things that's also going to be pretty interesting here is if the prosecution in this case, and I expect that they will, they're going to obtain those documents from those organizations in an attempt to use them at trial and bring in these other acts that possibly occurred to show that there's a pattern of behavior and or absence of mistake with respect to the allegations here, specifically the murder allegation, that there could not have been anybody else that had done this and that this was purposefully done.
So on the day that Rebekah was found, while some officers had spoken with Baptiste and Woods, you had others who checked on the brothers. They were inside the family car. Take a look.
Hi, guys. You guys doing okay? Yeah. So what happened today?
Today she ran away.
She ran away?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what happened?
And then she came back home.
Okay. When she came back home, how did that... Did Mom and Dad bring her home?
No. One of our neighbors from there, they saw them they saw her laying down on the ground, and then they brought her back home.
Oh, they brought her home? Okay.
Now, the joinder document provides context for Baptiste and Woods' alleged crimes, and it does it through information that was gathered from DCS, the schools that the children recently attended, the boys' own interviews. According to the document, quote, between November 2023 and May 2025, the three children appeared at school with marks, scratches, or bruises, complained about the physical discipline of laps and planks, and not being fed at home. A common theme in the children reporting abuse to trusted school professionals was changing their stories to protect their parents. For instance, KB1 said he got scratched on the neck because he did not clean up, and the following day, the 6-year-old changed his story completely, stating his mom didn't scratch him because he wasn't cleaning, it was because he was playing outside, and he was falling, and Mom tried catching him. And KB1 had a similar change in stories in September 2024, when he had marks on his neck again. First, he said, my mom was mad at me and accidentally scratched me. Later, KB1 said, never mind, she didn't do that, I just fell. In November 2024, when 5-year-old KB2 complained to a teacher that there was no food at home and he does planks for punishment, they also described he had a hurt toe, whole nail came off, and said, "My dad says I can't talk about it." KB2 added, "I hate having to go home." The teacher noted KB2 will disclose something and then say, "Never mind, I can't talk about that." Safa, this is tricky. This is tricky because the argument would be these kids maybe are telling the truth, but through maybe they don't want to get their parents in trouble, maybe they're getting, threatened or, influenced by the parents to not say what's going on. This comes up time and time again, but it does become a question: how reliable are these accounts from these children? What do investigators, what do prosecutors do?
They're going to take into account everything that these children have said. And not only are they going to take into account what these children have said to their teachers, who are mandated reporters, and other individuals that they may have come across in the community, and other caseworkers during investigations that have occurred previously, but they're also going to take a look at any documented injury from maybe a doctor's office, or any photos that may exist, or the testimony of the other children, or not testimony, so to speak, but the statements of the other children. And what they do is they put these children in what we call a forensic interview, where they're recorded. There are a number of individuals that are observing this, and a psychologist or psychiatrist is sitting and having a conversation with these children one-on-one to ask what happened, how things made them feel, to get them to open up about the abuse. And those interviews are very, very significant. Those interviews ultimately are going to be the crux of the prosecution's case when it comes to the child endangerment or child neglect and the homicide as it relates to Rebekah.
Now, before the family moved away from Phoenix, Rebekah had been attending Empower College Prep, which says it reported multiple instances of apparent abuse to DCS. In fact, in an interview with 12 News, Empower administrations presented documentation showing 12 different reports were made to DCS about Rebekah and her brothers. But that number kind of conflicts with DCS's acknowledgement of 5 school-initiated contacts, with only 1 rising to the level of an actual investigation. DCS says when the family moved away from Phoenix, the department lost track of them. There were also reportedly 5 police reports about the way Woods and Baptiste were treating the kids and the conditions they were living in. But those investigations were closed. There were no arrests. In a statement, DCS said, "We acknowledge that over the years, members of the community have contacted the DCS hotline in regards to the Baptiste family and have expressed frustration that some of their calls did not meet the legal criteria for an investigation or for removal of the children from the home. While we understand their frustrations, the department is a statutory agency that is bound by Arizona law and codes. That means DCS cannot investigate any calls to our hotline that do not meet the strict legal criteria, and calls such as those reporting truancy or crimes committed against children by anyone other than a parent, guardian, or custodian. Similar strict legal standards apply to when DCS can remove a child from their parents." Safa, is this a legitimate explanation, or is this a case of an agency passing the buck?
It's legitimate only to the point that it is governed by statutory law, and the law requires the agency to act in a certain way to investigate and to follow up and things of that nature. But to be quite frank, I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. You have not only one, you have numerous reports from different individuals that are alleging that abuse is taking place. How significant was the follow through? And your point of, there was only one that actually rose to a full on investigation. Why was that? Particularly when we have other allegations. We have allegations from teachers and other individuals. Why aren't those individuals at the very least interviewed with respect to what was occurring or what they observed with these children? So I personally think, and again, there's a drop of the ball. Then you lose track of these children. There's a number of reports through the Department of Children and Family Services. There's 5 reports or police reports that were unfounded. At what point do we say there's a problem here, and how do we better protect children?
No, that's a great point. That's a great point. And by the way, that's not all I have. So according to these newest court documents, listen to this. In January 2025, after RB missed school for 7 days, Empower Prep reported to DCS that 10-year-old RB spoke with a school representative and said she, quote, "gets treated mean at home. Discipline includes excessive running with little to no water." RB was asked who did it. RB replied, "Stepmom and dad." RB said she was having to run laps around the apartment as punishment. RB said she had extremely dry lips returning from break. RB said she was not given food or water the whole exercise. Now, prosecutors say that KB1 and KB2 were forensically interviewed on July 28, 2025, one day after Rebekah was found unresponsive, but before she was declared dead. Quote, KB2 disclosed that both of his parents hit him. Regarding his dad, KB2 said, he usually hits me a lot, but when asked for more details, he said, I'm not allowed to tell people about that. When asked about his worst time, that's when he talked about his mom. Usually my mom hits me with the belt. When asked about RB, KB1 said, I didn't see what happened. I just know that my mom and dad told me she ran away. KB1 said that the last time he saw his sister, she was in timeout still. KB1 told the interviewer that RB had to face the wall in timeout until bedtime. KB2 said the last time he saw RB, she was doing running, then she was doing laps. When asked if RB got hit, KB2 said she got hit, she always got hit a lot. When asked who hit RB, KB2 said, Mom. When asked to talk more about that, KB2 said, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about that because my mom said I'm not allowed to talk about that to you. More specifically, KB2 said, she said, don't talk to anyone that asks you that question, except I'm already talking to you. Safa, aside from this being absolutely heartbreaking, you also get a glimpse of, I guess, what their testimony would be like, right? At this potential trial of both these individuals.
Most definitely. You have an eye into what the testimony is going to be. And if the prosecution wants to, they can play those forensic interviews at the trial for the jury to see, which is going to be so substantial with regard to the proof. So they can put these young men on the stand to testify, or these children on the stand to testify, give them their own testimony through direct or cross-examination, and then also play the video, which I think the video, because it's so near in time after the incident with Rebekah occurred, is really going to sit in the minds of the jury. Oftentimes witnesses, they may forget certain things. They may, disappear or not be cooperative. And so there will be ways that the prosecution can at least use this forensic interview at a trial if necessary in order to help the jury determine whether or not these individuals are guilty or not. And I think also importantly here, we can see that these children have been coached on what to say. And again, these are all allegations at this point, but there's a pattern of behavior that when these children disclose, they share information, they don't share too much, and then the next day or so, we hear something to the effect of, my mom said we can't talk about that, or they're changing their stories. And this is a pattern of behavior that the prosecution is going to try to elicit at trial as well.
Incredibly impactful evidence. I mean, that's what we've been talking about. Admissions, statements from the children. Let me end with this. There is another portion of this document where prosecutors address the unbelievable injuries to Rebekah's body. So in the first part of this section, the writer actually erroneously refers to KB when they mean RB, but they detail what the information they received from the doctors. Quote, RB was bruised nearly from head to toe, sustained a head injury with a significant brain bleed, and was told that RB was so severely dehydrated that they did not believe she was physically capable of running away. Much of the bruising, abrasions, and burns described had various stages of healing or scabbing. Based on the physical exam, medical professionals diagnosed child physical abuse, child sexual abuse, and torture. Now, Safa, we talk about, well, are these children credible? That is the backup right there, right? I mean, you can't escape. I don't know what a defense attorney is going to do to try to explain that away. Do they hire their own medical examiner to do their own review of the injuries? Do they try to suggest that the conclusions are wrong? Do they try to suggest a lot of these injuries are from running around, a small child bumping and bruising? I don't know, because it doesn't seem to add up with what this medical professional is finding.
It doesn't add up at all. And of course, the defense, they can call their own expert witnesses to negate what the prosecution is arguing. But I think the issue is going to be this. Not only do we have the testimony of these children, not only do we have prior reports that are consistent with Rebekah running as punishment and being dehydrated and things of that nature. Now we have medical staff or medical experts, essentially, that say when we found her, when we examined the body, she was severely dehydrated to the point where we didn't think she could run. Not only that, but she had a TBI, traumatic brain injury. So based on that traumatic brain injury, what would have been her ability to actually act or run or do certain things? Because once somebody has a traumatic brain injury, there is some part of their mental faculty that can be impacted. what portion of the brain did that impact to even know if she could even run or do anything like that. And we also have one of the other children's testimony that the last time that he saw his sister was she was in timeout. So that would show that there was something going on during Rebekah's last moments, or what would be presumed to be her last moments prior to her being discovered in the roadway, that showed that she was under some sort of what people might call discipline or punishment at the hands of the defendants in this case.
Oral arguments on that motion for joinder. They're scheduled to happen this week. We've been following this for quite some time. We will continue to follow it. Safa Robinson-Ferrer, thank you so much for taking the time. I mean, I know, again, this is a very difficult case. It's a legally complex case, but an important case to cover nonetheless. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.